Welcome in to the Wilt Fong Whip Around. It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024, but recruiting does not stop. Neither does this channel, so make sure you subscribe right here to the On3 Recruits channel. A lot going on. Just yesterday, Oklahoma landing a five-star offensive tackle in Michael Fasusi. Steve Wiltfong, man, let's start right there. You actually joined the live commitment as soon as he announced his pledge to the Sooners. What does it mean for Oklahoma landing five-star Fasusi?
Well, to go out and land one of the premier offensive linemen in the country, adding to one of the best offensive line classes in the country. As the Sooners transition to the SEC this year, this is a class that sets them up at the point of attack for years to come. Michael Fasusi, one of the most coveted players in the country at the position, only been playing football, since his freshman year. Yesterday, they celebrated their 5-year anniversary of coming over from Nigeria to the States. He didn't even know what American football was when he arrived. Quickly fell in love with the game. He's kind of a football junkie now, JD. Loves watching film. In fact, spent a lot of time watching film with his 3 finalists, Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M. And that was the main thing for him. Which program is going to develop him the most? And he feels that at Oklahoma because of Bill Bedenbaugh's track record, the way they clicked watching film. Back in the spring when college coaches were on the road, JD, Bill Bedenbaugh spent 90 minutes over at Louisville High School, and they just watched film the entire time. Both Fasusi and Bill Bedenbaugh were running late to their next stop. Fasusi to class. Bill Bedenbaugh had to get to another school, but neither of them wanted to stop talking, watching ball. He's 6'5". He's 300 pounds. He can move. He can bend. He's ferocious. There's still a lot of upside there in the tank, and he adds to a terrific Oklahoma class alongside another blue-chip offensive tackle in Ryan Foji.
I was going to say, Steve, they're stocking up the trenches now. I know they moved to the SEC this year, but landing a 5-star offensive tackle and Michael Fasusi obviously doesn't hurt your efforts going forward as you move into this new era of Oklahoma football in the Southeastern Conference. You mentioned the O-line class. Who else is on the radar right now for them when it comes to continuing to fortify those trenches?
Well, yeah, when you look at what's in the fold, Ryan Foji, one of the best pass-blocking, strong-handed offensive linemen in the country. Darius Afalava is an offensive lineman that they have committed on the interior. His dad, Al, played in the NFL as a safety out of Oregon State. He is built like these offensive linemen in the SEC look, 330, 340 pounds. Guys at Georgia and Alabama have won a lot of football games. He can pull. He's strong. He can move. He's a ferocious player. They want to add Andrew Babalola to the fold. They also have Owen Hollenbrook, a power lifter from in-state, committed. Andrew Babalola is the missing piece, a 5-star offensive tackle from Kansas City, Missouri. He is a parent. You hear all the time, JD, that he is nearing his college decision. I believe it this time. I think he has a good idea where he's going to end up. And depending on who you're talking to, you get a different top 2. A lot of folks that used to say and Stanford are saying and Michigan now. So I think if you ask around Palo Alto, Stanford, and Michigan, if you ask around Norman, Oklahoma, and Michigan, if you ask around Auburn and Michigan. And then Michigan, I think they've always felt good. I think if you ask people around there, they think they're battling. I think they would view Stanford as the biggest adversary in that recruitment. Missouri rounds out the top 5. I think there's some confidence around the Plains they can pull it off. I don't think there's a better relationship out there than the one that he's formed with Coach Thornton, Coach Petard, and the Auburn staff. But Michigan, what they bring on and off the field, I think that's very attractive. Stanford's academics, the new staff going into their second year, and what they're building is exciting as well. So it'll be interesting to see where Babalola falls. Stanford's the on 3 RPM favorite, but we've been talking a lot about Michigan's momentum over the last couple months. And then Auburn and Oklahoma certainly aren't going away. And Missouri trying to be the dark horse as the 5th finalist.
Steve, I don't want to gloss over this. The pronunciation game this morning is extremely strong from Babalola to what was the other name? Afalava?
Yeah, Darius Afalava committed to Oklahoma out of Utah. That was a big win for the Sooners, beating Utah for him. Utah, they boast some of the best offensive lines year in and year out when you're talking about those West Coast-based programs, and that's a guy Oklahoma coveted. Again, looks like an SEC player right now, comes from terrific pedigree, a guy that's not ranked as high as maybe some others in the Oklahoma class, but when people are talking at the end of the cycle, who's the sleeper in Oklahoma's class, he's going to be a trendy pick for the size and athleticism and the tenacity he plays with.
The Sooners continuing to surge towards potentially another top 10 class in the 2025 cycle. Now, speaking of 5-stars in the state of Texas, we have Jonah Williams, 5-star safety, going to make his announcement on this very channel on Saturday. Steve, what's the latest you're hearing around him?
Saturday at 7:30, y'all, 7:30 Eastern, Jonah Williams will announce on the On3 Recruits channel. Make sure you're tuned in for that, because this one is going down to the wire. But as it stands right now, I like where the Texas Longhorns are at. And with that, I have moved my On3 RPM from the Aggies to the Texas Longhorns. Texas grabbed momentum in this recruitment with the final visit of his process at the end of July. It was a visit that kind of spurned the article that this could be a 5-star month for the Longhorns on the trail. We talked about Khalil Lockett, 5-star receiver. He is already committed to Texas. Jonah Williams was included in that article. Michael Fasusi, who we just talked about, obviously they missed out on him, but trending well for Jonah Williams. Jamie French announces at the end of the month, still trending well there. And then Michael Terry, the #1 athlete in the country, they're at or near the top of his list. But today's about Jonah Williams. He's announcing on Saturday. My prediction is with the Longhorns. His visit at the end of the month, at the end of July, was a humongous needle mover. Time spent with Coach Gideon, getting a chance to watch Texas practice. Steve Sarkisian and the new baseball coach, Coach Slazenger, they've been full speed ahead on recruiting Jonah Williams for both sports. And as I make a lot of calls this week and stack the information one way or another, I like where the Longhorns stand to ultimately land Jonah Williams. I think a dark horse in this recruitment is USC. The Trojans have quietly been laying in the weeds here, but he continues to have a lot of dialogue with USC. Can USC flip the momentum with Jonah Williams from now until Saturday? We'll see. We also know that Texas A&M and LSU remain in regular communication with Jonah Williams. I liked where Texas A&M stood going into the summer official visits after several visits during the spring, and LSU has been one of the front runners for the entire process for what they bring on the football field and on the baseball field. And then the fifth and final finalist here for Jonah Williams is Oregon. There was some momentum for Oregon coming out of his June 21st official visit. Dan Lanning and company are still battling for Jonah Williams as well. But right now, I got Texas in pole position heading down the stretch. USC is an interesting program in this one. Don't take your eye off them. Texas A&M and LSU still battling. They've had their moments in the sun in this recruitment. And then Oregon, Dan Lanning and company not going away.
Let's talk about another team, Steve, that actually kicks off their season this week in Ireland, Florida State. Also flirting with the top 10 in the On3 industry team recruiting rankings. What stands out about their class right now, Steve?
Well, I think you just start with the defensive line, the way that they've recruited 3 difference makers. Javian Hilson, one of the top pass rushers in the country, helped Cocoa High win a state championship as a junior, one of the most dominant pass rushers in high school football last year. And then Kevin Wynn and Myron Charles as defensive linemen that could play anywhere from the zero technique on out. Versatile, big-bodied, quick-footed defensive lineman. Kevin Wynn in particular, 30 tackles for loss as a junior. Florida State, they beat Alabama for Hilson. They beat Georgia for Kevin Wynn, and they beat Texas for Myron Charles. Now, they got to get them all to the finish line, but that is a terrific defensive line class. You won't find much better in the ACC this cycle. And then you also love the way that they're recruiting wide receivers. I mean, CJ Wiley's a 6'4" dynamic pass catcher that helped Milton win a state championship as a junior. Dalen McCutcheon is a smooth, explosive, sure-handed receiver that can also return kicks out of the Lone Star State. And then Malik Clark is a dynamic playmaker as well with good size and speed on the perimeter. You throw in 4-star tight end Chase Lofton, and Florida State's got an exciting group of pass catchers that can pose a lot of mismatches down the road.
Steve, you mentioned all the recruiting battles Florida State's winning and all those big brands and those big logos that they're beating out for some of these recruits, at least on the verbal side of things. What is it about Florida State right now that is maybe creating some buzz with some of these top recruits that's allowing them to land their commitment right now in this stage of the game?
Well, when you win your first 13 games of the season last year, that certainly helps. They win the ACC title game. They go to the Orange Bowl. Doesn't end the way they wanted to against Georgia, but the foundation is set that, hey, Florida State has arrived. Mike Norvell is no longer selling a vision. This is what we're trying to build. They're right there in the playoff equation. And it's a storied program with a rich tradition, a great fan base, and it doesn't hurt that they've been very successful in the NFL draft. They've been very successful in taking transfer portal kids and having those guys maximize their ability and hear their names called early in the NFL draft. That's another nice wrinkle for the Seminoles right now. But the coaching staff is very engaging on the trail, beginning with Mike Norvell. And with that, it's resonating with some top recruits.
Well, you mentioned it, like the overall brand of Florida State in itself is pretty attractive, but now with what they're doing on the field and the plan that Mike Norvell is putting into action, got to think that's attractive. Who is Florida State potentially after right now as it pertains to guys that they haven't yet landed commitments from?
Well, they're in on quite a few players right now as they push for. They have pound for pound the number 5 recruiting class in the country when looking at average ranking per commit right now. So what they already have in the fold is pretty star-studded. A couple positions of need for them moving forward: running back and linebacker. Running back, Usman Kroma from the Peach State is someone that they've been at the top or near the top for most of his process. And then Byron Lewis from in-state Fort Lauderdale. He's a guy that I have forecasted to Florida State on the on-3 RPM. They could land both of them. They'd be ecstatic if they landed each of those backs. And then at the linebacker position, Ty Jackson's obviously target numero uno. He's the number 1 linebacker in America per the on-3 player rankings. Florida State's going to get his last official visit of the process. He's going to be there over Thanksgiving weekend. He's not going to announce till December 4th. But Florida State, Florida, and Alabama are the 3 schools that I think are best positioned. You also have Penn State in the mix. USC is going to get an official visit in 2 weekends. He's going to be back at Penn State for the whiteout game. He's going to be at Florida for the season opener against Miami. A lot of Florida buzz here. He took his official visit in June, returned at the end of July. Now he's going to the Florida-Miami game to open the season. If the Gators get a win there, that'd be huge in this recruitment as well. And then Alabama going to be back in Tuscaloosa later this fall for the Georgia game, and Alabama's in the thick of it as well for Ty Jackson. But they'll try and flip some other guys like Tavian Wallace, who chose Arkansas. Florida State was one of the front runners for him for a long time. Hasty's a linebacker committed to West Virginia that they're in the middle of it for. But defensive end is another area for Florida State. Offensive line, but running back and linebacker are the 2 biggest needs, in my opinion, as they work through the rest of this 2025 cycle.
The Noles are putting in work on the trail. Now, I just mentioned they're going to open week 0 in Ireland against Georgia Tech. Now, Steve, what is intriguing to you about Georgia Tech right now with the work that Brent and Keene Company are doing? I know there's a couple of RPMs that might be hitting the radar.
I was recently introduced to Rowback, and I couldn't be more excited. When I say impressed by the quality and comfort, I mean it. I literally can't take this stuff off since trying it on. For starters, the Rowback polos are my favorite polos. They not only have fun designs for every occasion and season, but they fit perfectly and easily transition throughout the day. Rowback's everyday shorts are the perfect pairing as well. They are so comfortable and have an elastic waistband and great fabric that is made to stretch. Finally, the Rowback hoodie is by far my favorite piece of clothing I own. It is so comfortable. I wear this to start my day, end my day, and everything in between. Easy to be active in it or just relax. The hoodie will fit whatever the day has in store. They have also released a ton of new products. Between their brand new Tailwind tees and bathing suits, Rowback is ready for the warm weather. Rowback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, Cade Klubnik, among many others that are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes. Use the code STEVE on rowback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code STEVE.
Yeah, so first of all, Georgia Tech's got a top 25 recruiting class. The on-3 recruiting rankings go back to 2017. They have not finished that high in that era. And then I've been covering recruiting for a long time. This is trending to be one of the best Georgia Tech recruiting classes of all time. They're coming off their first winning season since 2018. Brent Key and this coaching staff have created a buzz around this program. Brent Key, obviously being his alma mater, hard-nosed, old-school offensive line type personality. He helped Alabama win some national championships. He knows what it looks like, and there's an edge to Georgia Tech's program. There's a lot of confidence around it, and there's a lot of resources and infrastructure being poured into Georgia Tech football right now. They've had some big recruiting wins recently. On 300 offensive lineman Josh Petty chose Georgia Tech over Florida State and Ohio State. Damola Ajudon is an offensive lineman from in-state that at one point was a Georgia lean, but he's rocking with Georgia Tech. This is a terrific offensive line class, one of the best in the ACC right now. And they're strong in the secondary too, with a couple long, fast, versatile players in Dalen Penson and Phoenix Felton. You brought up some on-3 RPMs. I got 2 in the game right now. One of them is for top 100 defensive lineman Christian Garrett from Prince Avenue Christian. He was recently decommitted from Georgia. He's trending hard to Georgia Tech right now. Programs like Texas and Tennessee have been in touch as well, but like where Georgia Tech stands. And then Blake Beelan's another defensive line recruit from out east that has Georgia Tech in his finalists with programs like Wake Forest, Syracuse, and Duke. But I think Georgia Tech's the program to beat for him. They have 22 commits, JD. 16 of them are from in-state. So home cooking's been very strong for them. Aaron Philo is a record-breaking quarterback that they signed in last year's class. He broke Trevor Lawrence's all-time passing yardage record. There's a lot of excitement around him as the quarterback of the future. They want to land some more perimeter guys to complement Aaron Philo as this class continues, some wideouts that can be game changers. And with a good season, they'll look to flip some guys that are committed to some high-profile schools right now.
You mentioned that, Steve, and I want to go back for a second here, the RPMs that you put in. Y'all, if you want to get all the intel, all the juice when it comes to the world of recruiting, stuff that's on the On3 website, get a subscription to on3.com. Use code FONG1 at checkout, $1 for your first month. I mean, you're going to find $1 walking down the street today. Use that dollar, FONG1, 1 month of just tons of content from Steve and the entire team at On3, so make sure you get that dialed in. Steve, you mentioned Brent Key and it being his alma mater and it being personal to him, and you alluded to maybe what they could do if they have some more success on the field in 2024. Where would they look to maybe take advantage if they do have some success in the win column this year?
Yeah, in addition to those defensive linemen, I mean, maybe they go after Travis Smith, receiver committed to Tennessee. I think that's kind of the scope that they're in, that no player of any caliber and ranking is off limits. Top 100 receiver from Atlanta, currently committed to the Vols. And I'm not saying he's on flip watch or anything. I'm just giving you perspective that if Georgia Tech goes out and has the year they want to have with the resources and infrastructure that they're building around this program, the excitement that Brent Key and his staff have built locally, Travis Smith Jr., players of that magnitude are guys that I think that they would take another swing on this fall if it goes the way they're dialing it up.
Jerome Myles set a decision date. What's the latest you're hearing around him?
Yeah, so the On3 RPM is on Utah right now. They just have to get it to the finish line, and there's some big hurdles potentially coming up. He's expected to be at USC's season opener in Las Vegas against LSU, an opportunity for him to see the Trojans play well. And then he'll be at USC the following weekend for an official visit. So USC getting 2 opportunities to start the season strong in front of Jerome Myles. Perhaps they make a move. He has Ohio State in his top 2 right now with Utah. But when I talked to him earlier in the week, there was not a visit scheduled yet to Ohio State.
And Steve, finally here to round out the show, I know it's never too early to look ahead. We talked about it on the last Wilt Fong Whip Around. We'll finish with this on this Wilt Fong Whip Around. Class of 2026, it's going to be here before we know it. What's the latest you're hearing on the number 1 player in that class right now, in Jakeem Stewart?
Yeah, I talked to the Jakeem Stewart camp this week. He's got some visits planned for the season. He's going to be at that LSU-USC game as well. Ohio State and Oregon was a game he was hoping to get to, but he's going to have his own game that weekend. But you can bet that he'll be dialed in closely because those 2 programs, USC and LSU, are the 4 that I'm looking at closest right now in the Jakeem Stewart sweepstakes. He's very excited to see how they play this fall, and he'll be weighing that into a decision that I think could come during the season.
Awesome. Well, like we said, recruiting does not stop. Make sure you subscribe right here to the On3 Recruits channel. The Wiltfong Whip Around multiple times a week, the 5-Star Flex, the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, all the recruiting content that you could possibly want. Steve, thanks for getting us in the know.
Thanks, JD. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back again on Monday for the next episode of Whip Around.